crisis in Britain in 2026. For centuries, the story of Britain was one of growth, a nation that expanded through industry, empire, and the sheer force of its rising population. But in 2026, a quiet threshold is being crossed, one that carries no fanfare, no ceremony, and yet may prove to be among the most consequential shifts in modern British history.
For the first time in peacetime since records began, the number of deaths in the United Kingdom is expected to exceed the number of births. More coffins than cradles, more endings than beginnings. It is not a sudden catastrophe. It is the slow, measured result of decades of demographic change, and its implications reach into every corner of British life. The origins of this crisis stretch back to the late 20th century. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Britain experienced a sustained decline in birth rates. The post-war baby boom, which had filled schools and housing estates across the country, began to fade. The introduction of the contraceptive pill, wider access to family planning, and shifting social attitudes toward marriage and parenthood all contributed to smaller families. By the 1980s, the average number of children born per woman in the United Kingdom had fallen below the replacement level of 2.1. It has never recovered. In the decades that followed, successive generations chose to have fewer children later in life. The cost of housing, the demands of dual-income households, and changing expectations around career and personal fulfillment reshaped the very idea of family. By 2020, the total fertility rate had dropped to approximately 1.58 children per woman, needs verification. By 2024, some estimates placed it closer to 1.44, among the lowest figures ever recorded in British history, needs verification. At the same time, Britain grew older. Advances in medicine, nutrition, and public health meant that life expectancy rose steadily throughout the 20th century. The generation born during and immediately after the Second World War, the so-called baby boomers, entered retirement in vast numbers during the 2010s and 2020s. The National Health Service, already under immense strain, faced rising demand from a population increasingly affected by age-related conditions, dementia, heart disease, and cancer among them. By 2025, more than 18% of the British population was aged 65 or over. Needs verification. The number of people reaching their 80s and 90s continued to climb. And with that came an inevitable rise in the annual number of deaths, not because of any crisis in care, but simply because a larger share of the population was reaching the end of natural life. The convergence of these two forces, fewer births and more deaths, created what demographers have long predicted: natural population decline. In 2026, projections from the Office for National Statistics suggest that the United Kingdom will record more deaths than births for the first time during a period of peace. Needs verification. This does not mean the overall population will immediately shrink. Immigration has, for decades, offset the declining birth rate and kept the population growing. But the underlying trend is unmistakable. Without sustained inward migration, Britain's population would already be in decline. The effects of this shift are far-reaching. A shrinking workforce places pressure on economic productivity, on tax revenues, and on the funding of public services, pensions, healthcare, and social care chief among them. Fewer young workers supporting a growing number of retirees creates a structural imbalance that no government has yet found a lasting solution for.